2005 by Studio Santa Monica's for Sony Entertainment. We've got God of War, the first one. Solid fucking banger. Little fun fact about that, God of War movie was originally planned for 2010 starring Vin Diesel, but the studio canceled it because it was a really bad idea. And we saw what happens when you give Vin Diesel anything. At number 9, a little bit of an odd one, if you were to ask me personally, we've got Madden 2010. I appreciate both of your faces because I feel
I'm looking for it. I'm not denying. I'm looking for it.
Gotta find it.
It was released in 2009, boys, so it counts. All right. Number 8, Mass Effect. I'm sure we all have some very fond Mass Effect memories in a shoebox in the back of your mental closet. What you ought to know is that Fox News and others describes the brief, non-explicit sex scenes in Mass Effect to what is regularly shown on network television, and that is just beautiful. Number 7, one that I personally remember playing a ton of, honestly until I broke the controller. Released in 2007 was Rock Band. Players made more than 30 million song purchases out of Rock Band's 600 plus downloadable track. Number 6, Prince of Persia, Sands of Time. Decent. I don't know about you, decent. Number 4, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare. And while technically the 8th Call of Duty game, Modern Warfare is the first to not be set in World War II. And this is their writing, not mine. First to not be set in World War II, which is dope because Hitler died a long fucking time ago, according to Complex Magazine. Number 4, Resident Evil 4, with a crazy remake. How do you guys feel about the remake? Did we like the character design revamps? You liked the remake?
Yes.
One of few. Coming out in 2005, Resident Evil 4 was originally to feature regular zombies as bad guys, but to avoid repeating formulas, developers decided to make Plagas-possessed humans called Los Ganados the enemy. Coming in at number 3, we have Gears of War in 2006. Marcus Phoenix, the game's protagonist, was voiced by John DiMaggio, who was also the voice of Bender on Futurama. In 2003, we have Halo Combat Evolved. And recently, I saw someone try to say on TikTok, that's my own fault for being there, I know, that Halo 4 was peak Halo. And these could be nostalgia glasses, but nothing will ever top Halo 3. Call me an old head, call me whatever you want. Old head? Thank you. I'm glad someone took me up on that. I hate when I make an offer and nobody acts on it. And then at number 1, a little bit of a hot take. I have seen multiple games in this series referred to as the best game of the 2000s. Complex has decided to go with Grand Theft Auto 3 of all of them. Kind of a banger. It definitely set the tone for the next few games to come. Definitely changed what it meant to have like an open world, YN main character, right? I think San Andreas really pushed the boundaries on the self-expression of your character. But I think some games that got snubbed in this, 2 of my personal favorite games growing up, Sonic Free Riders and Sonic Colors, as well as Sly Cooper, which is my super smooth transition into calling up the 2, the only, the world famous Kevin Miller and Kirk Thornton. Go ahead, give them a Y2 round of applause as they come up to the stage. I have got Kevin Miller, Sly Cooper, and then Kirk Thornton coming up as well. Richard Epcar. I am so sorry, I got this panel changed around.
Maybe Kirk should come in.
Yeah, I was just saying. Where is Kirk? But I am Kevin Miller, so that way you got 1 out of 2.
And I'm Richard Epcar. I'm not Kirk Thornton.
I wanted to be Kirk.
This is my chance to escape.
Yeah, you can run.
I can
He was like, the table was too small. guys have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. I'll come over.
Where's
I'll
Kirk
answer
Thornton?
them.
That's my
That's
question.
my question.
You know what? I'm called John Walsh because we need to find this man. We do need to get Kirk Thornton. He is. Now, Richard, I'm going to go ahead and have you introduce yourself, some of your video game roles that you partook in the
I
two.
don't know if I should introduce myself or introduce Kirk Thornton. I'm not
Yeah.
confused at this point. Hi, I'm Richard Epcar. I've been in a lot of games. Some of the games you might know me from. I feel like that character in, what is it?
Yes, The Simpsons?
Simpsons, yes.
You may know me from.
Yes, Troy McClure.
Troy
You might know me
McClure.
from. I'm in Mortal Kombat. I'm Raiden in Mortal Kombat. I'm the Joker in several games, including Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. And why is that guy talking in the home? And Kingdom Hearts. I'm Ansem in Kingdom Hearts.
Woo!
Dude, it's like, why do you have he's having a conversation right in the doorway?
There's another con over there. That's his.
I think they're having a con in the hall, is what they're doing.
Yeah, there's another one. It's called con.
I'm Akuma in Street
Hall
Fighter.
con.
What else have I been in? Oh God, I'm in a new game called Grand Blue. I play Eugen. I call him Eugen from Sheboygan, but he's not really from Sheboygan. What else? Just lots and lots of stuff. I've done over 1,200 characters in games and animation and anime, so I'm in a lot of stuff. We're just talking about games, right? We're not talking about other stuff.
We just mostly games on this panel, correct?
Yeah, correct. Well, I don't know. You're asking me. I don't know what this one. Apparently, I wasn't even supposed to be on this.
I know.
I've been trying to,
We love you, Richard.
That's the best part of these panels is you never know who's going to be there. You never know where you're going to be. huh?
No one knows. Now me,
Yes.
Kevin Miller, voice of Sly Cooper from the Sly Cooper franchise, as well as Jet Set Radio Future and Jet Grind Radio. And I was in Tales of Destiny 2, as well as a bunch of other titles. Men in Black 2 had a game, and Carmen Sandiego and the Secrets of the Stolen Drum. And this week, although it's not from 2000's, we just announced that I'm in Super Buff HD. That'll be coming out to Steam, so check that out. Nice.
You're coming out steamy, is that?
Yes, very steamy. Yeah.
Remind me a couple of the shows I forgot that.
Yeah, go for it.
I've done a couple of Star Wars games, which is nice to be part of that franchise. And I'm about 30 characters in Skyrim. And actually, one of the guys that said I took an arrow to the knee.
Just like that, too.
Just like
Yeah,
that.
I took
With that much emotion and excitement. Just like that. The guy in the hall who was on the phone was more excited. Oh my God. I hope that guy doesn't come to our restaurant tonight. That's all. Anyway, I digress.
Now, you say obviously one of the most memed voice acting lines in internet history, probably. I took an arrow through the knee.
I used to be an adventurer like you till I took an arrow to the knee, which is the actual word.
That was an exclusive just for you guys, by the way. I think he's got it on camera.
You think fucking Kurt Thornton would do that for you? He would not do that for you.
Now, was that the kind of line that when you were recording it, did you think that had any potential
I
to be?
thought that was the weirdest thing I'd ever heard in my life, but they explained it to me. Do you guys know what that means? Know what the line means? It was actually supposedly a colloquial expression that meant when you took an arrow to the knee, you got married. So you took an arrow to the knee, so you took them out of the action. In other words, so.
Got it. So there's a lot of married guys in that game.
Yes, walking around with arrows in their knees.
Got it. I think that the rings is a better tradition.
It's painful anyway.
Now, Kevin, I'm going to start with you on this one. Can you kind of take us through what your journey into voice acting looked like from the beginning? Was it something that you set out to do? Was it something that you kind of happenstanced upon? Or just kind of like take us through what kind of training you had and kind of like what led you into your career and kind of what it was like getting the role of Sly?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun story because it's a relic from another time. I don't think people can replicate the story of how I got into it because in the early 2000s, to be a voice actor, you had to actually get into a vehicle and drive to a location and then speak into a mic in a room with somebody. Now everybody can do that in their room. You can do it on the phone right now. So I was a part of
The guy in the hall was doing it.
he was auditioning right now. This is the other side. So I was part of a theater troupe called Comedy Sports. It's in San Jose. They're chapters all over the country, and they kind of did an open call for everyone at Comedy Sports to come in and record for Jet Grind Radio, because they needed younger sounding voices. So I booked that straight out of the gates as the noise tanks from that title. And then that just sort of snowballed at the same studio. And from there, I actually was an intern at that studio as a production coordinator. And so I helped audition the role of Sly Cooper for dozens and dozens of other actors, and booked myself to be one of the last people to audition for the role at the end of the week. And at this point, I had essentially rehearsed it. So by the time I went up to record, I had a really good read. Yeah, so I stole it from everybody else in good Sly Cooper fashion. Yeah. So I don't think people can do that now, because you need to record it on.
Which is not great, because we get a lot of auditions sometimes. Back in the day, we'd go into the studio and the director would be there, and the director would give you context and tell you what to do. Now they just send you the sides a lot of times. I just got these sides. There's no explanation about anything, and I'm assuming at the end of it he turns into like some sort of a monster because he's growling and all kind of shit. But it's like there's no description or anything, so you just have to kind of make a choice and jump in and do it and go for it.
Yeah, half the time you don't even get a picture. It's just words on a page now. So it's tough.
Very weird.
And so when you run into a scenario like that where you're receiving these lines for auditions and you're not getting anything, kind of explain the difference of, because you said we're kind of both relics from a different time in voice acting. What's the difference in finding a character now when you're receiving sides with little to no explanation versus when you would have to go in? And did you receive any tips for the character back then, or like what is your process for finding a character now with the difference of information that you're given?
Just to be clear, my on-ramp into voice acting was a relic. We're not relics, just to make sure that.
Just our onboarding.
Just the onboarding experience. He called us relics. We're sitting right here.
From here we can hear you, for God's sake.
Oh no. Kirk Thornton would have let me say it. Kirk Thornton would have been chill with it.
Kirk Thornton would have accepted being called a relic.
Well, I think what we're saying is that was the reality at the time, is that you had two people in the room in addition to the actor as part of the session. You had an engineer, you had a director giving you context. On the flip side, you could wait 2 to 4 hours for your turn to go into the booth because there was only one microphone, but it was more like an actual recording session. I think it helped improve the auditions at the time. I think it gave you more quality takes from the actors, and now it's just sort of like kind of rolling the dice. Who gets lucky?
Yeah, I think it was a better setup because you had a director there who gave you the context of what's happening. You usually get to see a picture, which we still do sometimes. We still get the pictures with the audition. So for me, it's if I can look at a picture, then I can imagine a voice that I would think would come out of that guy's mouth. For me, it's very helpful to see a picture. But sometimes you don't get the picture. Sometimes you just get a description of the character, and then you kind of have to imagine what that character looks like. But oftentimes, like I said, I just got a thing, and they requested me, which is interesting. They requested me for this thing, but they gave me absolutely no description of the character.
They liked your monster. They liked it.
I guess.
Another thing that was a hallmark of that time period is because you were in the studio, sometimes the actual client would be there, they could show you gameplay footage of the game. So you could, because it's not going anywhere, you didn't have a phone to record it. So you could actually see, sometimes you could even play it, and that would of course take the audition a really long time. But then that would often be the case when you get into the recording sessions. That was the truth for Sly, like to see early builds of the game while you're sitting there in session was pretty cool.
It is.
And then Richard, you as well. What was kind of your experience or your training that led you into voice acting? What were you doing when your career really kind of started to pick up with that?
Well, I'm an actor, and I went out to LA to be an on-camera actor, and I did a lot of soaps and TV shows and that sort of thing. And my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, was doing a movie, and they had another project that they had. They didn't like the actors' voices in the movie that they did, so they were having auditions, and she said, "Can I bring my boyfriend?" It was me, and I went in there, and the guy, we were basically going to redub those roles. And the guy said to me, "Have you ever done this before?" And I said, "Yeah, I've done it 1,000,000 times, and I'd never done it before in my life." So I went in there and I did it. And the fact that I'm also a drummer, there's a real rhythm to this stuff. So I just got into the rhythm and I got into the acting of it, and got the lead in that movie, and they liked me, and they just kept hiring me. And from that, I got into a little show called Robotech, which was on national television, and that became a big deal. And I have not stopped doing voice work since then. And that was, like 35, 40 years ago. So I'm only 35, so I don't know how that happened.
You're a child actor.
Yes.
Brilliant.
So, Kevin, kind of what was your experience with trying to find the voice of Sly? Especially because when you see a picture of a human, you can kind of assume what that guy's supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
I can only imagine it's much more difficult with an anthropomorphic animal the way it was. So, kind of like, where did you
Well,
even
I'm
begin?
hiding my tail currently, so.
But
So like this. Different slides.
Yeah, different slide.
it's okay. There's more furries in this room than you would be led to believe right now. But what was it like? What was kind of like your process? How was it one of your more challenging characters to find?
Yeah, I was a pretty green actor at the time. I was pretty young. And so that was really intimidating for sure.
Last week.
Yeah, that's right. Just last week. Yeah. Wait, 20 years ago? What year is this? So what's funny is what I learned from doing Sly is that I would be holding a pencil. It's funny I didn't bring one up. But I found if I kind of held it as if I was going to write at any moment, that became Sly's cane, because he's known for having this little cane. And so somehow, like to this day, if I get pulled into a session, they say, be Sly, I have to look around and find a pencil that helps me reconnect with that character and find that voice. Yeah. It's like Dumbo's magic feather, but less dumb, so.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting.
And then Richard, what is kind of your process? You've done so many video games. Some of them I'm sure have naturally come to you, and I'm sure haven't. What were some examples of harder characters that it was for you to kind of put yourself into?
Honestly, I really approach it as an actor on all the characters I do, and I've been really lucky. I've been able to play a wide range of characters, and most of them a lot of fun. And when I first started out, they would cast me for my normal voice, and I would get a lot of characters that used basically my normal voice. But as I was going on, I got to play a lot of. What are we doing?
How was that?
Oh,
got it.
I got to play a lot of really fun characters that sound nothing like me. In fact, when I first started doing the Joker, everyone's going, well, how's that going to work? You thought I was going to do it like Bateau or something. It's like, no, I'm going to do the Joker as the Joker. So, and I started doing more and more diverse characters that don't sound anything like me. So I love it when people come up to me and they go, I had no idea that was you. And to me, that's kind of fun. To do these characters that don't sound anything like you. But I still love doing the other characters. The worst for me is the ones where you're screaming.
Yes.
I agree with that. Like you do Call of Duty or those kind of games. You're basically screaming your balls off for 4 hours, and those are the hardest ones, really.
Yeah.
But as far as doing characters or whatever,
And sometimes they'll prioritize things, and so the screaming is important. They'll put it mid or early session, and then they want you to deliver a monologue later. You're like, I can't talk anymore.
Yes, you blew my pipes out.
I'm going to need some soup now.
Oh my God, yeah. If you have a competent director, he'll know to put that stuff at the end so you don't ruin your voice, the screaming and yelling and stuff. But like I say, there are these games, the combat games, where you're basically just screaming the entire time because you're shouting over, the machine guns and the tanks and all that stuff, and you just have to constantly be in this crazy, high energy thing and yelling out, and those are the hard ones, really.
What do you guys find more difficult? A scene where you're doing a bunch of yelling and you're just having to record a bunch of grunts and like action effects, essentially. Do you find that easier, or something more toned down where you're having to deliver maybe a much more stinging, like slow pace but emotional phrase? What do you guys think is more difficult? The slow, more intentional stuff, or just the hours of grunting?
Yeah, I think the hours of grunting is easier. It takes less brain. Whereas if you get a monologue or a big chunk of something with that emotional content, you have to sit and think about it and sit in that space. And that's where you'll be spending a lot of time with nuance of lines. You'll find they'll actually end up combining different takes and making one. Whereas the grunts and the action effects, that's just playing in a room. That's what I find.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have the opposite.
Yeah?
Of that. Yeah. to me, doing the grunts and stuff, because I kind of cut my teeth on what I like to call the chop sake movies that came from Thailand. It was basically, when I first started doing a lot of this work, it's all martial arts stuff. So it's all this fighting, you're doing all this fighting stuff and doing efforts and, you're getting hit or you're hitting. And so I just, for me, it's second nature. I have no problem. I know some of the newer voice actors have a hard time with efforts.
Oh, yeah?
And I've actually been hired to do efforts for stars in movies like Deadpool and Planet of the Apes and all that stuff, where actors that can't do their own effort sounds realistically. So I do a lot of that stuff as well. But that being said, for me, it's a lot more gratifying to have something that I can really sink my teeth into and get involved emotionally with and really connect with it. I really enjoy doing that kind of work.
Yeah, that's cool.
Now, I'm sure everybody's very curious, Kevin. Sly Cooper, you're so well known. Sly Cooper is you. That is your baby. That is your character.
Stop looking at the tail.
I'm sorry.
What parts of yourself, especially since you've been playing that character for so long, do you find is most similar to you as a person in your everyday life? And remember, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, and when he's done answering, I will come over to you, okay?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why I connected with Sly is that mischievousness. There's a little animatic that they made that didn't have any voice, but you may have seen it, where Sly steals a stamp from a high security prison or a museum and then takes it, and of course Carmelita Fox, the inspector, is trying to chase him down, and then he takes that antique stamp and puts it on a letter and sends it back to her just as a hey, I see you, miss you. And I think that's a good example of Sly, and I just did it just to get a rise out of you. And I think I really connect with that, so yeah, mischievous.
And then Richard, which of your characters do you think you have found the most of yourself in that you've kind of carried with you through the years?
The arrow in the knee, definitely.
Which one?
Arrow in the knee.
Arrow in the knee, no. That's a really hard question. I've done over 1,200 characters, so that's a lot of characters. But I really love Raiden. He's one of my favorite characters, just because he's such a noble, honorable character, and I just love playing him. And then the Joker's really a blast to play because he's like the total opposite of that. So, and it's really fun when I get to do scenes with those two characters and I'm talking to myself as these two characters. So that's kind of a blast. But yeah, there's a few characters, not necessarily in games, but like Bato and Ghost in the Shell. I really relate to him and Jigen and Lupin the Third. Those are some characters that I really feel an affinity with.
I also am a big Nato fanboy, so it's okay. I'm going to go ahead and have you come up, ask your question. Oh, did you not raise your hand? Oh,
You did now.
Come on in.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
All right. So this is a question I heard from. It's something that was brought up with the other voice actors that are out there in the booths and all that. You mentioned stuff about soup in between sessions. Is there something specific about soup that helps with your voice or something like that?
Soup?
Yes. Yeah.
I was kidding earlier.
You mentioned that in the booths over there as well. And I was like, is there something like a soup help with gravelness or something?
You all have stock options in Campbell's.
Please buy some chunky.
All right. What would you say is your favorite?
I think anything particularly when you're hurting your voice, you're it's vocally stressful. I think anything that's warm and wet on your throat feels good. So it could be soup, it could be tea, it could be anything.
Just hot water.
Yeah, even hot water. So you can feel hot. I think all of those things make your throat feel better.
All right. How would you say you would compare sad emotional voice acting compared to rage voice acting, where you're having to, you mentioned earlier, screaming, for example, fightings or Call of Duty where it's always shouting versus sad scenes where it's characters crying and all that.
Yeah.
What would you say is easier, or is there?
I think the rage and the anger is much easier, and I think you can get caught if you don't sound authentic when you're sad. It really comes across. So you have to pay a little more attention. I think it's easier to tap into anger and just do that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. But I do love being emotionally engaged in a role. So yeah.
Gentlemen, what kind of soup are we chowing down on between scenes? You strike me as a tomato basil guy.
Only if there's a grilled cheese sandwich with it.
A good cheese Sammy. What about you, Kevin?
Probably chicken noodle, something
A
classic.
a classic man up here. We love it.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question. Is
Sure.
besides the characters that you voice, what game would you like probably really like, and also what would your character's favorite like video game, TV show, or movie they would enjoy?
What would our characters enjoy?
Yeah.
All 1,200 of them.
We start with
All 30 Skyrim characters. What are all of their favorite shows?
yeah, the one guy likes Green Arrow for obvious reasons. I don't know.
You know, it's funny, in the first Sly game, we see Murray playing the PlayStation. I think it's a PS1. And I've always wondered what he was playing. So probably Parappa the Rappa would be my best guess. Maybe Ape Escape. But I don't know. I would like to think that Sly would actually play Sly Cooper. I think somehow he would steal
Just like
the emotions. Yeah. Play his own game. That makes sense to me. So.
I gotta tell you a funny story. I did War for Cybertron, which was a Transformer game, and I played Skywarp in it. And at the end of after we recorded everything, we went to the studio and they invited us in to play our characters, and they had these giant screens, and we got to play our characters. Well, I don't know if you guys have played that game or not, but you're in a cave, basically. You get a mission, and you have to get out of the cave and go on the mission. Well, it took me like an hour just to get out of the cave. So I just decided then and there I'm a much better actor than I am a gamer. So I leave the gaming to you guys and leave the acting to me.
That's upsetting. I'm not going to see you on Twitch later tonight. No Lies of P stream.
The game every day is GoldenEye. That's about the extent of my.
Oh, well, that's good.
They're remastering it for Switch, and I'm like super stoked. And GoldenEye, yeah, it's.
Hey, so I was wondering if either of the two of you had any choral experience that helped to like train your voice
I
toward
thought you
your
were talking about
profession.
scuba diving.
Snorkeling experience? The lungs get
I once took a coral to the knee.
It's very Hawaiian.
No, but I was in a rock band. I was in several rock bands. I'm a drummer, and I sang. Also, I sing. So I find that very helpful. And there are times where you go in and you have to sing as a character. So if you can't sing, you're kind of screwed. So
And I can't, and I've been screwed. So
Well, there you
there's-
go. What they'll do with you is they'll just hire someone to
That's
do your songs.
exactly right.
There you go.
That's exactly right. So no, but thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to ask between the two of you, what character would cause you to have the most bloopers when you were recording? I know, if I was voicing Raiden, every time I heard I must consult the elder gods, I'd probably crack up laughing.
Well, we should make that into a drinking game, right? Every time Ray says, I must consult the elder gods, so you take a shot,
I
right?
think like an alcohol poisoning.
By the first 10 minutes, you'd be drunk off your ass.
So I just wanted to know,
Well, I do have a blooper thing. I didn't bring it, but I usually bring it to cons, and we have Loop on the Third in there. We have what's the other one? No End, and then we have Bo 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 Bo. So actually, the Loop on the Third, we had a ton of, because I was directing it. So we have a ton of outtakes that we did, and they're very funny, if I do say so myself.
That's awesome. With Sly, a lot of his heavy lifting is the monologues at the beginning and end of the game. So there's not a lot of room for hilarious bloopers. It's mostly me just saying the word wrong, but it doesn't make a very good highlight reel.
Alright, that's the only question I really got. Thank you, though.
Sure, thank you.
Alrighty, and we very much appreciate these guys' time. They've been very gracious hanging out with us. So after this last question, I'm going to go ahead and get you guys out of here for the evening. If Finn would like to join us up here for his question.
Sure.
Very slept on.
That's true. Yes.
Hello. I was wondering, has there ever been like a line of dialogue that you guys had to read where you're just kind of like thrown off by it, where you're like, this sounds weird, like with PlayStation All-Stars for Sly, like some of the cutscenes were in the story mode, like his rival was like Nathan Drake, I think.
Yep, sure was.
It's just kind of it's so kind of abrupt how they fight. It's like, I'm here for this, and then Sly's like, I'm here for this, and they're like, die.
Pretty much, but that's that game, right? Like that's all right.
It's like real life.
Yeah, exactly. Hit you and I attack. Let's go. The core your question, like a weird line that comes up. I feel like there were a bunch of games that were ported from Japanese into English that I was a part of, where I was like, I don't know what I'm saying right now. and you try to like make a suggestion and like just stick to the script. You're like, okay. In the case of PlayStation All Stars Battle Royale, I actually had to bring me in twice, because the first time I came in, everything was shouting, like what you were saying with the guns and fires. Yeah. And so Sly was, every line was at 11. And about halfway through, I said, it's weird that we're shouting so much. That's usually the last scene of the game, like where you put Sly. And they're like, well, we just think if you're not shouting, we're not going to hear him. And I was like, okay, sounds good. 2 months later, I was brought back, and they're like, so we're going to bring you down. Because you didn't sound like Sly, because it didn't sound like Sly when he shouted the whole time. So.
Yeah, you got 2 sessions out of the deal.
I did, I sure did.
It's a beautiful thing.
Had to drive to Santa Monica twice, it was great.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was the question again? It was so long.
Any weird lines that stick out
Oh,
to you?
I have to agree. A lot of times we get these, we get Japanese scripts that have gone through Google Translate.
That's right. And then back to Japanese, and then Google
They're
Translate
just
again.
terrible. And it's like, how dare you kill me in such an undesirable fashion? It's like, who talks like that? So it's there's some very funny ones out there. But yeah, see, if you had me as your director, I would have changed the line and made it somewhat natural. Yeah, and I do that. I have to rewrite a lot of stuff when I'm directing, because it just sounds ridiculous. You want it to sound natural. You want it to sound conversational. You don't want it to sound stilted, or like it's a literal translation of another language.
Would you do both lines? Do the one that's written and the rewrite?
It depends on the client.
Yeah.
If the client asks for that, I will do that. But if not, they have to trust. They hired me, so they hopefully trust me to know what's going to work best for that situation. But there's some really funky writing out there.
Yeah. And it's not always written by writers too. It's sometimes written by an engineer or something. Yeah.
And I have to say, that's one thing I really love about Mortal Kombat. The writing is, as far as I'm concerned, is phenomenal. I mean, it's just really natural and realistic. And even though my character is a little stilted in the way he reacts to things, because he doesn't just speak like or typical American or whatever. He's a little more refined, and he has a little different way of expressing himself. But you have to make that sound natural and conversational, even though he has that about him, about his character. So hope that answered your question. I love your hat, by the way.
Awesome. We're gonna let these guys go with a big round of applause. This evening.
I'll just cry tonight in my room alone.
He's going straight to Kurt Sailor's.
Where were you? I covered for you.
Maybe you can do mine tomorrow. I don't know. But there you go. Whatever. Woo! Gentlemen, thank you guys. Come see us in the room and say hi.
Woo!
All right. Bye.
Bye, Kevin. We're your biggest fans.